Drew, first, man, appreciate you coming on. My first question is, have you ever seen what we saw Sunday? Have you been a part previously at your other stops of a perfect quarterback rating?
No, I don't think I have been. So it was fun to be a part of, certainly fun to watch as we went through the game on Sunday.
What stood out to you the most when you went back and watched the tape on Kyler specifically?
Two things, I think. Certainly the off schedule. You saw him make plays with his feet late in the down, extending plays, running with the ball, which is always impressive. But I think the thing that kind of stood out for me was just the operation and decision making from him throughout the game of, taking what was there, being aggressive when they gave him the opportunity. But the ball just seemed like it went where it should really most of the day, on time. I thought his decision making was really impressive.
I want to go back to what you just said about taking what was there. So, other than when I've had a conflict, I've done every game of Kyler since he was here. I did his games at Oklahoma and Iowa State, and Texas A&M against Iowa State. So I've watched Kyler for a long time. I have never seen him as sound fundamentally, at least from our vantage point. From your point of view, did you see that as well? Because it looked like every decision was the right decision.
Absolutely. And I think it's a combination, as you said. It's his feet, it's his eyes, it's the understanding, anticipation of what you're getting from the defense. And I thought it was nice to see kind of all those things come together. And the funny thing, and I'm sure he would admit this, is there's still a couple plays that we're going to look at and say, hey, we got to be a little cleaner here. We could have been a little bit better there. And you always feel that way regardless. But it was good to have that type of success and that type of performance from him while also being able to coach some of those things.
Drew, he's so good, obviously, at creating and improvising and doing the spectacular. How did you get him to, again, going back to the phrase, take what's there and not force it or try to be a hero when maybe he could do something, and he did, and we saw it a couple times on Sunday, that most guys can't do?
I think it's that balance. I think it's talking about it. It's showing examples of when it gets you in trouble and when it doesn't help the team and when it can help the team and understanding the situation you're in. And I think a lot of it's his understanding of the big picture of our offense and what we're trying to accomplish to say, hey, the better your decision making is, the more aggressive I'm going to be as a play caller. If you start to get careless, I'm going to pull back the reins and say, well, I can't do that because I'm not trusting you to make the right decisions to get the ball where it should go. And I think that relationship and that understanding has been really important for both of us. And I think it's one of the reasons now that I feel really comfortable with where he's at, and hopefully he feels really comfortable with the way the offense is rolling and kind of the way the plays are coming out of my mouth during the game.
I mean, hey, man, he clearly trusts you. Just listening to him talk about you when he meets with the media, I don't think he would just be saying that. I think it's real. How did you earn that trust? Because not everybody's been able to do that with him.
And I don't think it's just me. I think it's JG, it's all the people that interact with him in that building that really went in there with the mindset of like, hey, we're here to make the best version of you. It helps you, it helps the team, it helps all of us. I think ultimately that's going to be our goal, and that's my goal as a coach when I walk into any room, as a position coach, as a QC, as a coordinator. It's whoever I'm working with, I want you to be the best you, based on how you play the game, how you interact in the building, how you interact with your teammates, and how I do my job. And I think that has to be genuine. It has to be continually coached, and there also has to be understanding that we're all going to make mistakes. It's not going to be perfect. And I think that just having that open line of communication, leaning on the people around you, understanding that we're all on the same page, I think has been a really good situation, and certainly want it to continue.
And speaking of continuing, how do you get there? How do you get consistency? Because, again, we've seen the snapshots over the years of Kyler doing things, again, that most humans playing that position have never been able to do. So how do you get it consistent? Because it's not just the feet. It's the ball placement. It's the accuracy, which never gets talked about. I shouldn't say never. It doesn't get talked about a lot outside of this building, certainly nationally where it should. But how do you get to a point where it's week in, week out, like a Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, the great players that have won multiple Super Bowls?
I think it's a little bit of kind of what I mentioned earlier. It's never being satisfied with their performance and understanding that while it was exceptional, and I said this to him, it's as good a quarterback play as I've probably ever been a part of in my time in the NFL, but it doesn't mean it was perfect. And there's things that we can work on. There's things that we can clean up. There's things that we can be better at. And if we continue to strive for that, we're going to have a pretty good outcome down the line. And if we don't, and we're good, we got there, I'm all I need to be, I think that plateaus, and in this league, people start to take advantage of that, and you start to see that decline. So it's you have to constantly be working at your craft and kind of see where you can be better, how you can be better, whether it's feet, whether it's decision-making, accuracy, all of it, I think is never going to be perfect. And I think our mindset of no matter win, loss, draw, how do we get better? Where can we get better? I think that's really, really important for him and for our entire team.
Drew, where's the communication the first couple games compared to where it was the second half of last year in terms of how much you guys are talking, whether it's in between series or during the week, about, hey, I like this. Here, hey, I'm seeing this. How do you feel about this? Is there a lot of back and forth there?
There is, and honestly, it's funny. Like there might even be a little less than there was initially, because now it's kind of I like know the answer before I ask the question. Whereas last year, first time getting him on the field, first time really interacting in that way, there had to be a lot of those conversations. Like, are you feeling good about this? What are we thinking here? This is how I see this. This is how you see this. Now it's like some of those conversations are like the second I watch him run a play, I'm like, yeah, he's not feeling that. I don't need to ask, or I'm like, God, he feels that really well. I need to find different ways to do that, and that doesn't mean those conversations don't still happen, but I think sometimes they don't need to be verbalized as much as maybe they were when we first started working together.
Let's move to Marvin Harrison Jr. I know you had said after the game, and Kyler as well, and JG, that the ball's going where it's supposed to go, but how much early on were you putting Kyler in a position where Marvin Harrison's going to get the ball, meaning he's the first read, or...
Yeah, it's funny, and I know that quote kind of got blown out of proportion. I love that quote, and I told him that. Like that's what I've said to him since the moment I got here. Before Marv was here, like it's never his job to figure out who gets the ball. My job is to organize the plays and put a plan together with his help. And then he's got to go out there and play what he sees. And I think that's a really important part of playing the quarterback position. So, I wouldn't say it was any more than the Buffalo game. I think, look, he's one of our best players. He's going to be one or two in a lot of the progressions in what we do. Not all the time, but, it doesn't drastically change how the game was called or the ball happened to go there based on the look. And I was really happy to see him have that success. But I don't think it was drastically different in terms of the way it was built or the way Kyler played.
Same question I asked you about Kyler for Marvin. Have you ever seen what we saw in the first quarter by a receiver in your previous stops?
Yeah, it'd be hard. I mean, I've been around some good players, but that was just that catch in the back of the end zone, being able to control the ball, get 2 feet down, I thought was exceptional, and just his feel for kind of the off schedule and playing within space, coupled with Kyler's ability to kind of feel the field and extend plays, I thought was really special there early. So it was an impressive performance for sure.
What were some of the things he did week 2 that maybe he didn't do week 1?
I think that's almost the best part. Like to me, nothing. And I think that's the validating part for him and for us as a group. It's like stay consistent with your process, stay consistent with the way you play the game, give everything you have to the team and to yourself, and good things will happen. I think that's really what he did. I don't think he changed. I mean, he would be able to speak to that better than I did, but I didn't see a difference in who he was during the week, how he went about practice, how he went through the game, and the ball happened to go his way, and I know he's capable of making those plays, so I wasn't surprised by that. So it was really just good to see him have the success, not changing anything.
We're spending a lot of time talking about the passing game, but the rushing attack has been at the top of the league. You look at 200-yard rushing games since the start of last season, you guys have 2 more than anybody else. You guys have 5, Detroit's next with 3. What's been the key to establishing the identity as a team that's going to run the football and beat you up physically? Because it was a physical rushing attack this past weekend.
Absolutely. I think ultimately that comes from the players. We're going to preach things, we're going to have plays, we're going to design things, and I've said this in the room, the identity of the offense is always going to be built around the guys that are on the field. And I think they've really embraced that mindset of like, we're here to be physical and to push people around and to bully people in the run game, knowing that, yes, it's going to help us in the pass game, but that if we don't want to throw the ball, we never have to. And I think that mindset, whether true or not, is awesome. Like, I think that's real. I think certainly James is a big part of that mindset. And it's been fun to be a part of from that standpoint because I think they take a lot of pride in it. I think it's something that they walk into a game, and I've said this to them, in the room, like win, lose, or draw, I want every team to walk off the field after they play us and be like, that was a dogfight. Like, that was hard. Like, those guys brought it for 60 minutes or however long we were on the field, and I think they've embodied that, and I think we have the right guys mindset-wise to go do that. So it's always, as we talked about with Mar, it's fun to see them have success doing that.
Back to James, knowing some people in the Steelers organization, there are some that think that they look at James Conner as kind of the one that got away. Like, yeah, Mike Tomlin's made a lot of great decisions. That organization obviously has been one of the best in the league, but maybe that was a mistake, not bringing him back when they did a few years ago. What do you remember before you got here about James Conner? Because obviously in Cleveland, you saw him twice a year.
I think it's a lot of things you see here. Like, he is such a consistent running back. I mean, the days of guys who are consistently getting 25, 30 carries or capable of taking on that workload of this league is few and far between. And just the way he takes care of his body, the way he prepares, and then you see that kind of explosiveness at that size. I would love to know, like, over the course of his career, his yards after contact. But it seems like throughout his career, it's never the first guy. It's never an arm tackle. It's never getting pulled down by one. It's always breaking the first tackle, running the second guy over, getting those extra yards. And that's certainly what I remember before being here, and he's certainly continued that while he's been here.
What about Trey Benson? What have you seen so far through 2 games that you like?
I think Trey's learned a ton from James, just about how to be a pro, how to go about your process. I think one of the things, and it's always funny, like people say, runs come up differently. James had a little bit more success this game. Hey, if you get 8 to 10 carries, sometimes you're going to have 70 yards, sometimes you're going to have 15. Like, that's the nature of the run game, especially when you're a high-volume runner. You're going to pop a couple, and that's going to get you your 120, 130, 150 yards, which is great. But I've been really pleased with just kind of the way he's kind of been a sponge to all that. And I think you see him when he has the ball in his hand, the explosiveness. Like, I didn't think about the check down we threw to him in the past game. Like, with a lot of people, that's a 1 yard, 2 yard, or a loss. He's getting the edge, running away from a guy, going to get 7 or 8 yards on that play, and that changes the whole dynamic of that drive.
How about the offensive line? Paris moving from right to left. What has stood out to you there when you're watching the film back on Paris?
You wouldn't notice. Like, I think that's probably the biggest thing. Right to left, left to right. I think he's done a great job over there. There hasn't been those plays where, he looks a little uncomfortable in that stance or set in that way. I think he jumped in and embraced that challenge, and I think that's really been a testament to him and what he's been able to accomplish.
What about Evan at left guard? I'm sure a lot of people didn't notice him prior. I mean, you don't notice guards very often unless you're really watching it like you're watching it. What do you think we have there in Evan Brown?
I think he embodies kind of the stuff we talked about earlier with the run game and the O-line, just his attitude, the way he plays the game, what he brings to that room. You have to have a sense of, like, first of all, obviously it's an unselfish position by nature, but just his love of the run game, the violence, the fight, I think all of that, it permeates throughout that group and throughout the team, and I think he's a big part of that.
Your multiple tight ends said a lot. Elijah Higgins is somebody that's really off the radar probably nationally, but you guys clearly liked him last year, and then you get the payoff with the touchdown this past week. How has he grown, and how can he help continue to transform this offense as a weapon? Because obviously Trey McBride is the guy that's going to get the pub, and he's probably going to get more footballs, but Elijah clearly has proven himself.
Absolutely, and I think, and this is true at all positions, and tight end probably in this offense more than any, like, we don't evaluate that position based on catches. We never will. It's a part of the role, but it's just one other part of the role. We ask those guys to do so much in all different phases of the offense, really. And I think last year was really his first year playing the position, coming as more of a receiver coming out of college. I think his comfort level with all those different jobs has just grown dramatically. I think he's taken that on very seriously. I think he's learned a ton from Trey. I think Trey's been a great mentor to him for that. But been really pleased with that development, and really would just expect that to continue as he gets more and more reps within the offense.
You talk about Trey being a mentor early on. He's trying to figure things out when he got here, and obviously you're going from Colorado State, where he was the best tight end in college football, but you're not playing Alabama's defense every week. Well, now you are. You're playing Georgia every week. When you kind of look back, it did take a while. When did it click? What was the difference when you go back and think about his transformation?
It's a great question. And again, he'd be able to answer that better than me in terms of when it clicked. Because for us, it was always kind of like, you knew when he got his opportunities, he was going to make the most of it. Certainly, we had a guy here in front of him at the time, and Zach, that had earned that role and deserved that role. But I think when, unfortunate injuries are a part of the NFL, when Trey got his opportunity, he was ready for it. It wasn't like, I'm going to get my feet wet, see how it goes. It was like, no, I've been preparing for this moment. Here's my chance. I'm going to go make the most of it. And I think he did that, which was awesome. I mean, that's what you want everybody in that building to do, is you never know when your opportunity is going to come. You got to be ready for it.
What about Tip Ryman? Wolf, obviously, every time we're doing the game, he loves it every time he's in the game. How's he coming along?
He's been great. I think, and you heard it when he came out of college, like his mindset in terms of what he brings this offense. He loves to block. He loves to move people in the running game. And I think the thing that you see a little bit, he's pretty good in the passing game. Like, he's a big body. He's got great catch radius. But his violence and what he brings up front is real. And I think the nature of being able to do both creates a little bit of indecision there for the defense of, like, all right, we can get big, but this dude can split out. He can run routes. He can make plays in the passing game. And I think it helps us kind of create that indecision in a defensive coordinator's mind.
I don't expect you to get into game planning at all, but what's the biggest challenge when you look at Detroit's defense?
The easy answer, 97 is probably one of the best defensive ends in the National Football League. I mean, he's a full package. I mean, he run game, pass rush, violence, effort. He does it all. I think that certainly is at the top of the list, but I think they've done a great job from a roster building standpoint of really having talent at just about every level on this defense. And I think that becomes the real challenge. Is like, there's no, hey, we're going to take advantage of this weak link or that weak link, or we're going to try to expose this. It's kind of like, hey, we got to go win our one-on-ones and play at a really high level if we want to go out here and compete against this defense, because they're going to bring it.
It's going to be physical, right? I mean, just based on the identity that you guys have formed and clearly what they have turned into there, right?
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's certainly my belief. You hear it from them publicly, like it's a violent game. And it has to be if you want to play it at a high level. I think we embrace that. I know they embrace that. So I think it's going to be an exciting one on Sunday.
I know your focus is the Lions, but I do want to ask you a little bit here in the closing minutes just about kind of the difference for you, year one to year two, as a play caller. What do you think has been the biggest difference early on here for you in year two?
Having Kyler healthy certainly is a big difference. A lot of people have asked me that, and I don't feel like it's been a massive transformation. I think certainly there's things you do throughout a game, throughout a week, throughout the season where you're like, all right, hey, next time we do that, I want to tweak this or change that or be a little different here. I think I'm always going to be doing that to some extent. And there's things I change. I'm like, no, that's not it. Let's go back to the way we did it, 3 weeks ago. I think that's part of me trying to improve my process. If we're going to ask the players to, hey, you got to constantly be evaluating your performance, where can you be better? I think I, as a coach, have to do that. And certainly there's been a number of areas, whether it's game management, just how we put the plan together, how we use different personnel. But I think at the end of the day, I don't know if that will ever change year 1 to 2 or year 10 to 11, if I'm ever lucky to have that opportunity. So it's been fun getting a chance to do it again, and it's certainly always a little bit more fun when the players are playing at a high level, and we've been fortunate enough to have those guys out there who can do that.
When you self-scouted in the offseason and looked back, was there anything you said, okay, that there's something there that I need to specifically grow?
Yes, I guess I can't necessarily say all those on radio, but absolutely, there's definitely areas in terms of how we're using certain people or certain situational football where I'm saying, all right, I'm too predictable here. I don't really love, my mindset there kind of based on what I thought needed to be, done over time. I want to shift or I want to change, and that has to be intentional. I think that's not going to be natural at all times, and you have to force some of those on yourself to make sure that you understand why you're doing it. You put the plan together to make sure you're staying consistent with it, and that's been, I think, something we've tried to be as a staff moving into year 2 better than we were a year ago.
Last one, the vibe with JG and the conversations that the two of you have during the week and on game day and during the game and after the game. How would you say that's similar to last year? How would you say that's different from last year?
And I don't know if people agree. I think those conversations have been the same since we started working together 11 years ago. And just in terms of the way we view the game, the way we talk about the game, the way we see the game, I think is very similar. I think we're both very honest about what happened, what didn't happen, why it happened, where we can be better as a head coach, as a coordinator, as a team. So I think that's what makes it fun for me. I mean, those relationships, those conversations, that's why we got close when we were young coaches. I don't think those conversations have really changed in any way, shape, or form, which is pretty cool. Like that, and I'm lucky to come to work with a guy who I believe in as much as I believe in him. And just to learn from him and interact with him, I think has been really special for me.
Well, this past week was fun to watch. You're deservedly so getting a lot of praise for it, but I know in your mind you're already on to Detroit. But congratulations so far in the start. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.